The men's national football team of African nation Mauritius has landed in Kathmandu for the 2 international friendly matches against Nepal. Mauritius are preparing for the preliminary round of African Cup of Nations and have termed the clash against host Nepal difficult and an opportunity to assess their strengths and areas for improvement. Good morning, I'm Abhyuday Shrestha and these are the headlines of the hour. 8,054 new coronavirus cases reported in Nepal through PCR tests. Service of health institutions affected with infected health professionals. Ruling parties involved in legworks to amend Local Elections Act to avoid legal complications. Term of local representatives ending in 3 months with local elections unsure. Some 8,500 combat-ready U.S. troops on high alert to deploy at short notice amid rising tension over Ukraine. Russia continues to deny planning military action against Ukraine. And Gambia and Cameroon advanced to the quarterfinals of the African Cup of Nations. At least 6 people killed and dozens hurt in a crush outside a stadium hosting the tournament. 4 more COVID-19 related deaths were confirmed yesterday, taking the country's death toll to 11,659, while 8,054 have tested positive through RT-PCR tests, as 16,654 swab samples were tested. Meanwhile, 2,265 others have tested positive for the virus through antigen tests. Kathmandu continues to report the highest number of daily infections with 3,634 new cases yesterday, followed by Chitwan that reported 790 new cases. Meanwhile, 2,540 registered full recovery from the virus and the recovery rate stands at 89.7%. There are 82,550 active cases in the country at the moment, which includes 80,779 in home isolation, 1,771 in institutional isolation, 238 in ICUs, and 43 on ventilator support. It has been 2 years since the first case of COVID-19 was detected in the country. In this report, we look at how the government dealt with the pandemic during this period and whether the government's initiatives during the ongoing 3rd wave of the pandemic is adequate to curb the rising number of infections.
Nepal reported the first case of COVID-19 on January 22, 2020. A person who had arrived in the country from China had tested positive after his swab samples were sent to Hong Kong for tests. The second positive case was reported 2 months later in March 23rd, following which the government imposed nationwide lockdown. However, at the lack of proper contact tracing and tests, the lockdown was ineffective in curbing the spread of the virus. More than 275,000 individuals tested positive for COVID-19 during the first wave, while 3,014 lost their lives. The second wave of the pandemic that saw the Delta variant of the virus began in mid-April 2021. More than 553,000 were infected with the virus, while the second wave took the death toll to 8,580. Hospital resources were strained and many infected patients were deprived of oxygen and hospital beds, among other health support. The scenario of the health system during the ongoing 3rd wave of the pandemic seems no different, with the government unable to take any concrete measures to control the rapidly spreading Omicron variant. In the past 2 years, the government has added infrastructures to support the health system. The number of ICUs that stood at 524 during the first wave has been raised to 2,797. There are now 1,008 ventilators as opposed to 222 during the first wave. The government has also claimed it has been able to expand the number of oxygen plants to tackle scarcity seen during the first and the second waves. However, the number of infected in less than 1 month time already stands at 90,017, while 61 of the infected have already succumbed to the virus. Health experts say the government lacked timely actions for the ongoing outbreak and that the authorities once again failed to learn from its previous mistakes.
Services at hospitals across the country have been affected as health workers have tested positive for COVID-19 in recent time. According to the Ministry of Health and Population, 973 health workers have so far tested positive in the country. The number, however, as per the data from hospital administrations, is far less than the real affected. The Sukraraj Tropical and Infectious Disease Center has halted vaccination programs due to the lack of staff. More than 60 health workers at the center have tested positive for the virus. Elsewhere in Patan Hospital, 150 health workers have been infected by the virus, 270 in Bir Hospital and around 600 in Teaching Hospital. Likewise, 216 health workers in Dharan's BP Koirala Health Sciences Academy are infected, 110 in Biratnagar's Koshi Hospital, 85 in Bharatpur Hospital and 37 in Seti Zonal Hospital, among others, interrupting many of the daily health services. In our Public Voice segment, we had asked the locals in several provinces how have they viewed the measures taken by the authorities to control the spread of COVID-19. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
एकदमै राम्रो छ हामी जस्तो जनतालाई अझ सचेतना गराउन जरुरी छ
सरकारले जसरी चाहिँ तदारुकता साथ गर्नु पर्थ्यो त्यो गर्न सकेको छैन
बजारमा हेर्ने हो भने जताभावी चाहिँ मान्छेहरू हिँडिरहेछन्
कोरोना भ्याक्सिनको लागि पर्याप्त मात्रामा उपलब्ध भएको छैन
सरकारले गरेको काम चाहिँ कुनै पनि गतिलो गरे जस्तो मलाई चाहिँ लाग्दैन
र ठाउँ ठाउँमा भ्याक्सिन भयो खोपहरू लगाउने पनि सहज रूपमा पाइरहेका छौं
सरकारले गरेको निर्णय सबै तह सबै गाउँपालिका सबै स्थानीय तहमा पुगेको देखिँदैन
The ruling parties are currently involved in legworks to amend the Local Level Elections Act 2073 in order to avoid legal complications, as the alliance intends to avoid holding the local level elections in April as recommended by the Election Commission. As per Article 225 of the Constitution, the government must hold elections within 6 months of the end of the term of local representatives. On the contrary, Clause 3 of the Local Elections Act requires elections to be held 2 months prior to the end of the tenure of local representatives. Both the Constitution and the state laws do not include provisions in case the local levels are without representatives. Many have opined an amendment to let the current representatives extend their tenure would prevent constitutional and legal confusion. Meanwhile, parties of the ruling alliance and the opposition have failed to find a common ground if any amendments are to be made through parliamentary proceedings to address the conflicting provisions. The tenure of local representatives who were elected from the previous elections is ending in 3 months' time. However, the ruling alliance has been in a dilemma regarding the upcoming elections, citing contradicting provisions in the Constitution and existing laws. Meanwhile, the main opposition, CPN-UML, that has been insisting on holding the elections in April, has also not been able to provide an alternative to end the confusion. The government should have already expedited preparations for the elections. However, the ruling alliance is doing legworks to amend the constitutional provisions that require the local level elections to be held within 6 months' time from the end of the tenure of local representatives. Meanwhile, CPN-UML opines the local representative's position should not remain vacant, however, has yet to dwell on the existing legal provisions. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion. And here's the question. Why have forest encroachment not stopped? Your options are A, political cover, B, government apathy, and C, forest mafias in play. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B, or C, and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. The men's national football team of African nations Mauritius arrived in Nepal yesterday for 2 international friendly matches. Nepal and Mauritius are to play 2 international friendly matches on Saturday and next Tuesday. Visitors Mauritius are preparing for the preliminary round of the African Cup of Nations and have considered the friendly matches against Nepal significant for the same. Coach Tony Francois has said that the matches against Nepal would be difficult and help in assessing their standards.
Pre-qualification for the CAN, and we are going to play in March with Sao Tome in principle. To match home and away matches, so we will be held on 21 and 29 March. We have this match with Nepal to be a good opportunity to see our team to play an international match. We have a player who has been tested positive before we came here, so we live here at home. So all the players are okay, and we have some players who has been injured also, and also some who has not been jabbed also. So they were not able to come here.
The international friendlies mark Nepal's first encounter with an African nation. Nepal's head coach Abdullah Al-Mutairi is yet to announce his team for the friendly matches. And that's all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.